Hello and welcome back to the channel. I'm evidently not on the West Highland Way anymore. I'm back at home and I slept on my own bed and that was fantastic. I'm out walking the dogs. I'm back into my ordinary life here. I'm no longer on the trail as a, well, basically trail hobo. It was a fantastic trip and you will see the end part to my series covering from the very start to the end of the West Highland Way. It was a fantastic trip, but as with everything, it all comes to an end and I'm back home now. So what I'm going to do is play the video and you can see that last segment of the West Highland Way that we did, and at the end I'm going to do a very short question and answers kind of segment, and then I'll just give you my thoughts and feelings about the trip, and then what I'll actually do is just do a quick summary. And I think that's probably the best way to round all this up, because some people will probably definitely have some thoughts and questions on how and why we did it the way we did. But yeah, I'll now roll you straight into the video, so let's get straight on with it. Now, as a quick reset, we stayed in the King's House Hotel just basically to rest for 2 nights. We were feeling quite exhausted by this point, and it was also to avoid the incoming weather system, which was for heavy rain. So we're saying goodbye to the King's House and we're on the trail, and it's a Devil's Staircase, which is our next obstacle. There's a bit of wind. It's got the threat of rain. We're not supposed to have rain, but I'm guessing we'll have showers. The skies are black and laden, but I can deal with that. So yeah, let's keep marching onwards. Devil's Staircase, here we come. Right, we're starting to climb out the valley and we're heading up the Devil's Staircase, and I'm looking at a dirty great ridge line in front of me, and it's a false summit as well, because you've got to go out over the back to crest over the hill before you drop down. So I'll give you a quick indication. Now, as a correction, you actually pass through a saddle on the top of the hill, so the highest points up that hill are left or right of you. You're basically going through the centre of that and dropping down behind. So we've just, well, basically completed the Devil's Staircase, and we're coming down the opposite side, and it's quite nice. It's nice to have a bit of downhill now, but it's hard on the knees coming downhill on these gravel tracks. But we've got 3 to 4 miles, I think, of relative downhill before you get to a small little village called Kinlochleven, and we're going to check out and see what time we get there and whether or not we're going to camp or stay under a hard roof again. We're kind of too close to the end to really be pushing ourselves, but I'm going to catch Dave up. He's beginning to move at a speed of 1,000 gazelles. I think he can taste a whiskey. Now, it was on this track, or further on this track, that both me and Dave found our knees experiencing quite a lot of discomfort, particularly as it got a steeper gradient. Right, it's an early start. We're leaving Kinlochleven, and we're just walking past, well, basically it was an aluminium factory at one point, but now it's a hydro plant, and we've got a pass to go up through. So straight off the bat we're climbing. Seem to be doing better on the climbs than the descents. The descents are giving me and Dave a little bit of jip on Dave, both his knees, and I've got my right hand knee, which does seem to be suffering on the descents. You get this real painful jarring going up. That's quite common as you get older and carrying weight. So we're going to push on through the trail now. Right, you can see the pipes coming down through the mountains, and you follow those down into the village itself. But that's a hydro power plant that I was talking about. And the whole village is surrounded by these mountains that eventually go into another loch. So we're just taking a quick breather before we step off, and we've got to go through a pass that winds its way up through these mountains and up over to a forestry block, which we can then make our way down through into Fort William. Bit of a slog straight off the bat. We're talking ourselves into the fact we're fresh, but these packs ain't getting any lighter, so we're going to step off now. So we're climbing on a gravel and rock track, which is by now extremely familiar for us, and we're climbing out of this mountain pass, and just down there is Kinlochleven, and this is a slightly more gentle part of the gradient, but it does get quite steep. Well, me and Dave stopped for a water break, and I'm down to a t-shirt, quite simply because we've had quite swinging temperatures from -8, -10 all the way up to where we are now, which is 11 degrees. Now that's a 21-degree swing, which adds a little bit more complexity to the hike itself. You're constantly adapting to varying temperatures on various different terrains. So me and Dave have just got some warm kit on because it was hot work coming up through that pass, but as soon as we crested onto this gravel track, which we've got a good few miles of, it's actually become chilly. The wind is roaring through the mountains. So yeah, get some warm kit on and we're going to plod these gravel tracks out. Right. You can just about see the loch through the mountains over there in the far distance. We're faced with these and this long winding gravel track. We haven't had rain. We had it last night, but yeah, we're hoping it holds off. And we're hoping to make our way to the Ben Nevis forestry to camp one last time. Right, we've just hit a slight downhill section and it's just steep enough to help us along, but not steep enough to jar the legs. The clouds are hanging low in the mountains, so you can't see the tops, but it's stunning, well, stunning scenery to walk through this valley. The actual camera doesn't do it justice because the mountain in front of me is just going way into the clouds. I'll see if I can catch it from a different angle, but it looks like there's a ruin down here, and what a place to live back in the time. It would have been hard going, but oh, the scenery is mind-blowing. There's Dave plodding on down the trail, but you can't even see the top. You can just see like scree and loose boulders coming off the side there. That must be quite steep. You might just be able to pick the track winding its way down about 1.5 miles further down through the valley. Yet again, I'm filming. I need to catch up with Dave. Sadly, some people have left their rubbish behind. Right, I think if I look at the map, we're heading down to that forest. That's Ben Nevis forest. And I think that may be Ben Nevis up there, right at the back of this other rise. Right, the wind has got up and it's quite cold, and beginning to feel a bit fatigued. So it really is a case of getting into that wood line and thinking about setting up a camp and making the final push to Fort William in the morning, hoping to be there for like 12 o'clock. We are now getting our first glimpse of Ben Nevis as we come out towards the forest. And in the evening light, it looks almost magical. Things didn't work out to plan. It was a struggle to find a pitch and light was fading. A bit of a pattern of, for us this seems to be. But we've got 2 tarps up now in a tent configuration. So we're going to get straight in our sleeping bags after we've eaten. Get up really early, take the camp down and start making our way into Fort William. We want to finish really kind of early to give us time to sort out our admin and sort train tickets and start thinking about the homeward journey. But that's still a little way to go yet. We're actually being blown quite heavily by a lot of wind at the moment, so the thing is to make it through the night without the tarp disappearing down this hillside. A nice full moon to help us pack up. And there's where I stayed. Just getting my Bergen all packed. This is a trackway. And Dave is just a little way down the road. It really was lastminute.com, as you can see. And Dave's getting all his stuff away. It's about 6:30 and we're getting ready for that final push into Fort William. So yeah, no lie-ins, sleep-ins or luxuries today. As this gravel track winds its way down to the road which finally takes you to Fort William, you are treated to spectacular views of Ben Nevis. There was cloud cover obscuring some parts of Ben Nevis, but it was still an awesome sight. And it is kind of the finale as you basically start coming to the end of the Highland Way. Now there is a strange feeling at this point because you're down at road level and you know the trail is coming to an end. All that hard work, blood, sweat and tears. You know you're going to be coming past the original end point to the Highland Way, but you're going to have to make your way into the town centre to a statue. There's nobody clapping you in. It all is a personal achievement. And it is kind of a little bit, you have to be able to acknowledge that. We've done it, Dave.
That's it, Andrew. Well done, mate.
Index.
Index. There you go, Andrew. Well done, mate. You got to touch his head. That's it. Well done. Index.
So I'm in the Folklore Hiking Stick Workshop and it's rather civilised, or that's how it feels compared to being out on the trail. I've got a tin of biscuits there, I've got my coffee, and I've had the heating on, which is a luxury compared to what I'm used to. So I'm going to get straight into some questions and answers. And the first burning one would be, why did it take us the best part of 2 weeks to actually complete the trail? Well, the very simple answer to that is we were carrying what I will describe as military weight and kind of load systems. So to break that down, Dave was carrying the best part of 30 kilos. I was carrying 28, and this is at the start, and that includes our wet food. Obviously, as we went through the trail, the weight dropped off significantly due to us eating the wet food, but I still finished the trail about 25 kilos. Dave would have finished at about 28. So it was the weight we were carrying meant that we were moving slowly. We're older gentlemen. We're not in our prime, which would be what traditional soldiers would be using this kit and used to carrying these weights. We're older, but it's a kit that we're familiar with, and it's a kit that we wanted to use. Quite simply, Dave had 2 sleeping systems he was trying out, and for myself, I had this kit available to me, which you see me wild camp and go on my trails down here in North Cornwall. So we were used to it, and it's what we took. The second question, which basically feeds in on the back of the first one, is why did we use the setups that we did when clearly 99% of people would be using lightweight civilian or the ultralight kit. We went packing for the winter on the trail, and we knew we'd be skirting around the Scottish mountains. We packed enough food and equipment and the type of equipment that we knew we could hunker down if we got, let's just say, snowed in or stuck somewhere, or the shops weren't open. We really could survive on that trail quite simply out of our Bergen for 2 weeks. We'd had the capacity to not even go into a hard roof or hard cover, or we didn't even need to go to shops for food. We were self-contained out of our Bergen, which is kind of a military philosophy, but like I said, that meant we were slow, we were cumbersome, and it did put a lot of emphasis on us having to look after ourselves by not overexerting. We could have quite easily done more miles in a day, but it did mean that we were fatiguing ourselves quite heavily. Another question, what was the hardest part on the West Highland Way trail for us? Well, I have to agree with a lot of comments and people that I see are discussing that question on other videos relating to the West Highland Way, and that is the Loch Lomond section. If you were carrying lightweight or ultralight equipment, it may not be such an issue, but for us, big, wide, heavy Bergens, moving slow and a bit cumbersome, the rocks and roots section, as Dave likes to call it, and I've adopted that saying as well. That was quite hard going for us, because quite often you're going up, down, around and over, trip hazards, rocks in the way, roots trying to trip you up at every opportunity, everything being damp, kind of slippery. You did have to be careful. It was stunningly beautiful, and that's the one positive about that section, Loch Lomond. Stunningly beautiful, but for somebody carrying the weight that we were, it was quite a chore, and we did work hard to get through that section. But yeah, like I said, the beauty of it compensated for that, but I can't underline the nature of the terrain. It is hard going, it's long, it's tiring, and it can be fatiguing. The thing is, you do have to be eyes on the floor. You can be distracted by looking around at the beauty and then find yourself face planting because you've tripped over or fallen over. You do have to keep your eyes on the ground as well. The next bit that I'm going to say might sound a bit irrelevant, but we did find the Devil's Staircase. Once you get to the top of it, it isn't quite as bad as you think. That name will instantly strike fear into your hearts. But for us, it was the descent into Kinlochleven, because quite simply, Dave has two knees that really do feel the downhills, and I've got one. So if you're in a similar position to us with that kind of issue, the constant downhill, and on some parts it's really steep, of pounding away on your knees, it can be, well, for us it got a little bit tiring and it kind of blew us out a little bit. So the descent into Kinlochleven was, yeah, a very tough section for us. So basically, Loch Lomond and the descent into Kinlochleven, those were the worst parts of the trail for us. So what's my favourite part of the trail? For me personally, it was from Kinlochleven to the Ben Nevis forest where we camped up. Quite simply because my eyes were totally on stalks with the scenery around us. High mountains, valleys, rivers. It was quintessentially what you really do think of when you think of the Scottish Highlands. There was a ruin there. It just added to that sense and vibe of history and people being there from, you know, a long distant past. I just felt really absorbed into that landscape. And when you come around the corner and, you know, coming out of the Kinlochleven section and the moors and those valleys, and you get to see Ben Nevis, you know, it's starting to come on the horizon, you really had that feeling that you were somewhere, well, really special. And that was my favourite part of the West Highland Way trail. Right then, we took all that equipment. So the next question is, did we use all that equipment? Because we did stay under hard cover in guest houses and, you know, pubs along the way. Well, a simple answer is we were on that trail, like I said, for a 2-week period. We camped on that trip more times or more nights than a lot of people are on that trail. I think it worked out to something like 8 camps out, something like that. Or even, yeah, 8 camps out, 7 or 8 anyway. So, yeah, we did use all our equipment and we used it in a wide variety of conditions. The temperatures that we experienced ranged from -8, although some of the locals we spoke to said it got below that. And it went all the way up to kind of like 11 degrees, possibly more. So there was a huge swing round of temperatures. If you just say, you know, anywhere from -10 to -11, that's a 21 degrees swing. So we camped out in everything from you know, snow and frost on the ground, waking up to ice inside and outside our tarps. you know, all the way to the point where it was so hot some nights I actually had to vent my Arctic sleeping bag system because I was getting too hot. Yes, we did use all our equipment over that period of the trip, and we did use hard standing cover like guest houses and pubs, quite simply because it was getting fatiguing for us carrying all that equipment, and we would have possibly been a little bit longer on the trail if we didn't have the opportunity to rest up. We did find that we were in that vicious circle of diminishing you know, kind of returns, because the more we hiked and camped outside, the less mileage we were doing the next day after and the next day after. Where once we'd stayed in a hotel or guest house, had a bath, had a bit of decent food, a full proper night's sleep, we got up the next day, those would be the most productive days on the trail. So it wasn't wasted, you know, our camping equipment. We did use it, and we used it, like I said, more times than most people, or more times than a lot of people would be on the trail, the days they would be on the trail, and we had the guest houses. So we had the best of both worlds, really. And it also added more flavour to the trip because we were able to interact with a lot of locals. And yeah, it worked out well for us. Right then, so what would I do differently on this trail? Well, the burning thing that sticks in the back of my mind is basically, at 55, I'm no longer that young man, you know, green, mean, lean and keen. So I would probably adopt the philosophy that most people will use on that trail. And that is go with lightweight equipment for that Pacific time of year, and to actually adopt that mentality of trying to make things easier for myself, but always around that principle of the right kit for the right time of year and safety in mind. But it wouldn't be a military kind of setup like I had this time. I think Dave would follow with that philosophy. We've got nothing to prove anymore. He's done it twice carrying all this type of equipment. I've done it once. Yeah, I've kind of learnt a little bit of a lesson that basically I need to go lightweight if I'm going to do this sort of thing. And I would recommend that to anybody else. Don't follow the setup that we had, quite simply because there are civilian equivalents that can get the job done lighter, and meaning that you would not be being as fatigued as what we are. I went from my belt being on the number 2 hole all the way back. I could get 5 holes on my belt. I lost a lot of weight, and that was because, quite simply, every day was a workout for me. So go lightweight next time. I guess the next thing is basically what time of year, because quite simply we are talking about the Highlands of Scotland. I know people say the summer months or the warmer months you're dealing with midges, which seem to really blight that particular area. But Scotland in winter is harsh, and if you're outside camping like what we did, just look back through my catalogue of videos covering this trip. It was and is harsh if you're not used to it or prepared to camp out in those conditions. It has its own kind of beauty which can't be described. You have to visually see it and feel it, and you do feel immersed in that environment in the winter months. But I would kind of say the summer months, I could imagine all the foliage being out, it being more soft around the edges and more pleasant. And I would like to go back to Scotland and see it in that kind of light and vein. I've experienced the harshness and the beauty that comes from that. But I would possibly say the best times would be the summer months to do it, not particularly the winter, because it brings a whole raft of new challenges. So my final thoughts on the West Highland Way and my trip. Well, the West Highland Way is pretty much set up to go from Malgrive to Fort William, and that's the route that we took. Roughly 96 to 97 miles in total, but if you skirt off the trail to get camping locations or go to accommodation, you can add possibly some more mileage to it. And I would guess we were probably more near 100 miles by the time you factored in those equations. I had a brilliant time. It was exactly what I thought. It was exactly how I imagined it, although possibly a little bit more challenging carrying the weight load that I was carrying. But Scotland at that time of year, as I always say and keep saying, is beautiful. It has a real harshness and rawness to it that really, you know, you can feel it in your soul, and you can't describe it. It's somewhere you need to go, and everywhere you go, you can feel the history and you know, that timeless element to the area. I would definitely go back again, but this time it would be with the family, and I'd do it in a family kind of holiday, just to allow them to experience a little bit of what I've seen and done, but obviously in a more packaged holiday setup. Will I ever go back and do this again? Possibly not, because I have other things and projects I want to do. This has been a bucket list item for me. I did do a trip to Scotland when I was 21, which I went and looked around the Highlands. But I always said I was going to come back and do it on foot and feel it in the manner that my videos show you. I've now done it. I've completed that bucket list, and I'm so glad I've done it. The West Highland Way is definitely a trail for any and everybody. On the train home, I did actually meet an 80-year-old lady who said that she'd done it a few years prior, and on her trip she was doing segments of the trail, going back to accommodation, and all her bags and things were being moved to the next location for her. She had a fantastic time, and it goes to show you the diversity on the styles of actually doing the West Highland Way. I would thoroughly recommend you do it. If you've got any desire to do it, don't put it off. Get out there and do it. Just choose the time of year that would suit you the best. But for me, fantastic trip, fantastic company, fantastic scenery, a real hard workout, and memories for life. So all that's left for me to say is take care, stay safe, and I hope to see you guys on the trail.